We've looked at the first three of these key questions dealing with student engagement. How do I feel? That is, what are the student's emotions and beliefs about the material? Second, am I interested? Is there some level of interest on the part of the student? Third, is this important? That is, does the student believe the material is valuable and important to him? So the last question is, can I do this? This addresses the student's perception of his ability, not necessarily his actual ability. For example, if a student is firmly convinced he can play NBA basketball, even though he's only 5'5" at the age of 18, he's going to be motivated to engage in working on his basketball, in spite of the fact that he won't make it to the NBA. Conversely, if an otherwise good student believes he is incapable of learning math, he's not going to make an effort to engage in the material and try to learn it. So our goal as teachers is to help persuade the students that they are able to do what we ask them to do. Now, let me clarify something. I'm not saying that teachers should engage in a popular approach of just giving kids endless reams of fake encouragement. You can do anything if you set your mind to it. You are the most talented and gifted person in the human race. You have endless potential, those types of things. Kids see through that, and they see it as insincere and worthless. Now, what we're talking about here is helping students to see that they truly are capable of doing what we're asking them to do in class. One of the keys here is something we touched on in an earlier video. The difference between a view that ability is fixed and a view that it is subject to growth. If a student's ability to succeed is a fixed, unchanging quantity, which varies for each student, or is it a principle that's subject to growth and change? You see, if a student believes his intelligence and ability is a fixed, unchanging entity, then he's not going to be motivated to engage in things which he believes are outside that ability. But if he believes that his abilities and success have the potential for growth and development, then he's more likely to put forth the effort to grow. Now, if we want to avoid developing a fixed mindset in our students, we need to be especially careful with our verbal feedback. Some things we tend to say, but which we should avoid, are some of these. You're really smart. You see, that implies that the student is successful because of his innate abilities. And so if he believes he doesn't have innate ability in some other area, he's going to think that he's just not smart. Something else we might say, well, girls just don't do well in engineering. If that's true, then there's no point in girls trying. That's the same as if we say boys just don't do well at having babies. No point in trying then. Something else we might say, my parents were not very musical either, so I'm not. Now, this implies that ability is just a matter of genetics. Now, I might note here, personally, neither of my parents were musical at all. But I have an undergraduate degree in music performance, and I perform music regularly now. A lot of times we hear this statement about math. A mom might say, well, Billy, I was never good at math either. Okay. Ability is not just a matter of genetics. We might tell a student, you have a lot of talent in art. Now, it might be true that somebody is very talented in art, and I don't want to imply that there are not varieties of gifts. But it isn't really helpful to keep telling a student that his good art is the result of his natural talent, because soon he and others begin to think that's all it is. If you're talented, then you'll automatically do well. And if you're not talented, there's no point in trying. And what you see also is that students who begin to think that their success is due to their natural talent will often quit trying to improve. It's like, hey, this just comes easy to me, I don't have to worry about it. Instead, you don't want them to think that it's just something that's natural to them. Instead, we need to find ways to encourage our students to have a growth mindset. That they're not just operating from a fixed amount of intelligence, but that they can, through the Lord's help, grow and change and improve in their academic abilities and skills. Some examples of positive statements you can use. It looks like you put a lot of effort into this. You were very focused on this. Keep it up. I can tell from your work that you were well prepared and it paid off. This is really excellent work. You really thought this through. You came to class well informed today. I can see you were ready for this test. And we should be specific about these. We should point out specific ways the student worked hard and how it resulted in something definite. You were well prepared because you were able to answer whatever questions I asked you. You put a lot of effort into making sure all your PowerPoint slides had a similar theme and design. So you're focusing on the result here. Even when you do need to be negative, if possible, include some positives. You know, I can see that you laid out your pictures on the poster with care, but, and then some criticism. But also make sure you're focusing, as I say, on visible results, not trying to judge his motives or the heart. Telling a student, you just didn't try, that's an unknown. Maybe he really thought he was trying, but he just wasn't trying the right thing. Saying, you're not working hard enough, opens things up to refutation. I mean, you'll get parents who will come back and say, well, my child spent hours on that homework. What do you mean he's not working hard enough? Instead, you should focus on specific areas of improvement. For example, you know, if you go back and have someone check your spelling, it will help your grade. Or, you showed a lot of preparation on the first part of the exam, but the second part shows that you should look again at how to conjugate the past tense. And even when you do think something indicates a lack of effort, ground it in the evidence that you see. You might say something like this: your grade wasn't as good as usual, and there were more careless mistakes. Did you spend enough time working on this? You see, asking a question like this allows the student to examine himself, and that's a good habit to develop in itself, and then he judges whether his effort was adequate. You don't know whether he's trying, whether he's putting effort into his work, whether he's spending time on it at home. What you do know are the results, and you can bring out some possible causes for those results, and that's what you need to focus on. It's important that not only you as the teacher should have the right mindset about your students, that is, a growth versus a fixed mindset, but that your students need to develop that mindset as well. They need to realize that success is not just a result of innate abilities and gifts, but that success involves work and progress. This is the idea of self-efficacy. Now, I'm not here promoting the idea of you can be anything you want to be approach. I mean, a 6'2", 275-pound boy is not going to become a jockey winning the Kentucky Derby. But for many things in school, when a student accepts a growth mindset, he develops a proper sense of self-efficacy, that he can succeed if he does the right things in the right way through hard work and practice. So we need to teach our students about that directly if they're going to give a positive answer to the question, can I do this? One thing you can do is to take a brief survey of your students, similar to this one. Give them a question like this: your intelligence is something about you that you can't change very much. Have your students answer this and then discuss it. If they are on the agree end of this question, then they have a fixed mindset. If they're on the disagree end, they have a growth mindset. Actually, you might bring this question up with your students several times. Once, when they're working about or thinking about a subject or skill which they do very well. And then a second time while they're thinking about a subject or skill in which they're not doing well. You see, this might open up more discussion. Often they'll have a growth mindset in the areas where they do well. That is, I do well in math because I work hard at it. And they might have a fixed mindset in the other areas of study, like I don't do well in art because I'm just not an artist. The idea again is to help our students develop a growth mindset. Once they have that outlook, then they're more likely to be able to give a positive answer to the question, can I do this? Because they will think, I can do it if I apply myself to it. So now we've looked at these 4 key questions which are the foundation for student engagement. If students answer these questions the right way, if they have positive feelings about the content, if they're interested in the content, if they believe it's important, and if they believe they're capable of doing it, they are more likely to be engaged in the lesson. Now here's the key. These things are generally not going to happen unless you specifically plan for them. For example, you need to think of ways to deal with the pacing of the class, considering things like administrative tasks, transitions between activities, and how quickly or slowly you present new material. Plan ahead of times for times in your lesson you should show more enthusiasm, or when you can give feedback. Think about ways you can connect your lessons to students' life ambitions. For most teachers, these things don't just happen automatically. So you need to work at them and plan for them. In our next video, we'll begin looking at some specific teaching techniques which will build on this foundation, things you can do in the classroom to promote student engagement.